The rain hammered down like fists against the Seattle pavement. Daniel Carter pressed himself against the cold concrete wall, his breath catching as Victoria Hale's voice drifted through the half-open door. She thought she was alone. Her words, barely a whisper, cut through the storm. No man ever stays. He shouldn't be hearing this. The woman who commanded boardrooms, who turned blueprints into billion-dollar empires, sounded broken. Daniel's hands trembled, not from the cold. If you want to know what happens when a broken man meets a guarded heart, stay until the end. Like this video and comment your city. Let's see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in the parking garage buzzed like dying insects. Daniel Carter sat in his beat-up Ford F-150, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel hard enough to make his knuckles white. Rain pounded the roof in waves, each drop a tiny hammer reminding him he should have left an hour ago. But he hadn't. Through the truck's rain-streaked windshield, the Hale Industries building rose into the Seattle night like a monument to everything Daniel wasn't. Glass and steel, perfect angles, money that didn't worry about grocery budgets or parent-teacher conferences or whether the hot water heater would last another winter. He checked his phone. 9:47 p.m. 3 missed calls from his sister Rachel, who was watching Emma tonight. His daughter was probably asleep by now, curled up with that ratty stuffed elephant she refused to let him wash. Just go home, he muttered to himself. But his hand didn't reach for the ignition. Daniel had been working facilities management at Hale Industries for 8 months. 8 months of fixing broken toilets, replacing burnout bulbs, patching drywall where someone's ego had put a hole. The kind of work that made you invisible. People looked through him like he was part of the furniture, which was fine. He preferred it that way. He'd learned to be invisible 3 years ago when his marriage collapsed. When Sarah sat him down in their kitchen and told him that being physically present wasn't the same as actually being there, that she'd been lonely for years while he sat 3 feet away, that their daughter deserved better than a father who checked out emotionally before he even came home from work. Sarah wasn't wrong. That was the part that gutted him. So Daniel rebuilt himself into someone different. Someone who showed up, who listened, who noticed the small things. He might not have a college degree or a corner office, but he could be present. He could be reliable, even if it meant he kept everyone at arm's length to do it. The rain let up slightly. Daniel wiped condensation from the inside of his windshield and squinted at the building. Most of the windows were dark now. The 9th floor, where Victoria Hale's office occupied an entire corner, still glowed with light. She was always the last one there. Victoria Hale. 30 years old. Billionaire. Self-made, if you believe the magazine profiles. Daniel had read exactly one article about her months ago when he'd first started. The piece had used words like visionary and revolutionary and uncompromising. It showed photos of her at galas, at construction sites, at design conferences. Always alone, always perfect, always untouchable. Daniel had met her exactly 4 times in 8 months. Brief encounters, elevator small talk. Once she'd asked him to fix a stuck window in her office. He'd done it while she worked, her attention never leaving her computer screen. When he finished, she'd said, "Thank you," without looking up. He hadn't expected anything else. Tonight he'd been doing his final rounds when he'd heard raised voices from the executive floor. Not unusual. Architects argued about everything. But as he'd gotten closer, he'd realized it was just one voice. Victoria's. On the phone. Daniel should have turned around, should have taken the stairs, should have minded his own damn business. Instead, he'd frozen in the hallway outside her office door, which she'd left cracked open. And he'd heard her. "Mom would tell me I'm being ridiculous." Her voice had been quiet, strained, not the crisp, commanding tone she used in meetings. "But Mom's not here anymore, is she?" Silence. Whoever was on the other end must have been speaking. "I know you don't need me to worry. You tell me that every week. But that's not how this works, Evan. That's not—" Her voice cracked. "I can't just stop being your sister because it's convenient." More silence. Then, "No man ever stays." The words had hit Daniel like a physical thing, soft, final, resigned. They say they understand. They say it's fine. Then 6 months in, maybe a year, they start making comments, start pulling away, start looking at me like I'm asking too much by just Existing the way I exist. Daniel had pressed himself against the wall, heart hammering. So no, I'm not dating anyone. I'm not interested in another round of pretending someone might actually... She'd stopped, breathed. I need to go. I'll see you Sunday. Love you. The call had ended with a soft click. Daniel had stood there for maybe 30 seconds, maybe 30 minutes. Time had gotten weird. Then he'd moved, quietly, quickly, taking the emergency stairs down, his boots echoing in the concrete shaft. Now, sitting in his truck, he couldn't shake the sound of her voice. Broken. That's what she'd sounded like. And it bothered him more than it should. Daniel knew broken. He'd been broken. Maybe still was, in ways he didn't want to examine too closely. But Victoria Hale wasn't supposed to be broken. She was supposed to be made of glass and steel, just like her buildings. Not your problem, he said aloud. His phone buzzed. Rachel. Emma's fine, fell asleep during Frozen. Again, don't rush. Daniel typed back, on my way, 20 minutes. He started the engine. The truck coughed twice before catching, another item on a long list of things he couldn't quite afford to fix yet. The radio came on mid-song, some acoustic thing about second chances that he immediately turned off. As he put the truck in reverse, movement caught his eye. Victoria Hale stood at the building's main entrance, no umbrella, letting the rain soak through her gray suit jacket. She wasn't moving, just standing there, face tilted up slightly, eyes closed. Daniel's foot hovered over the gas pedal. She looked small. That was the thing that grabbed him. This woman who commanded rooms full of men twice her age, who'd built an empire before 30, who probably had more money in her checking account than Daniel would see in his lifetime. She looked small and alone and human. Not your problem, he repeated. But his hand shifted the truck back into park. Daniel didn't do this, didn't get involved, didn't stick his neck out. He'd learned that lesson. Caring too much, feeling too much, it just led to more ways to fail people. He sat there, engine running, wipers cutting arcs through the rain. Victoria's shoulders moved, once, twice. She was crying. Damn it! Daniel killed the engine and grabbed his jacket from the passenger seat. He stepped out into the rain, which immediately found every gap in his collar, and jogged toward the building entrance. Victoria didn't hear him coming. Or if she did, she didn't react. She just stood there, rain streaming down her face, mixing with tears she probably thought nobody could see. Miss Hale? She spun, and for a half second Daniel saw everything. The red eyes, the exhaustion, the crack in the armor. Then it vanished. Her expression smoothed into professional neutrality so fast it was almost impressive. Daniel! She straightened, swiping at her face like she could pass it off as just rain. What are you still doing here? Final rounds. The lie came easily. Forgot to check the roof access, wanted to make sure it's locked before the weekend. At 10 o'clock at night? Thorough, he said. She almost smiled. Almost. Right. An awkward silence stretched between them. Victoria crossed her arms, and Daniel noticed her hands were shaking slightly. You okay? The question slipped out before he could stop it. Fine. She said it too quickly. Long day. Yeah. Another silence. The rain hammered down. Victoria made no move to go inside, and Daniel didn't know how to leave without making it weird. I should, they both said at once, then stopped. You first, Daniel offered. Victoria shook her head. I was just going to say I should head home. It's late. Right, yeah, me too. Neither of them moved. Victoria looked at him then, really looked, and Daniel felt weirdly exposed, like she could see straight through the careful distance he kept between himself and everyone else. You live north, don't you? She asked. Ballard? Greenwood, actually. Close enough. That's a long drive this time of night. 20 minutes, 30 if traffic's bad. Which it isn't, at 10 p.m. on a Thursday. No, Daniel agreed. Not usually. Victoria uncrossed her arms, then crossed them again. She was fidgeting, he realized. This woman who negotiated billion-dollar contracts was nervous. I heard something earlier, she said quietly. In the hallway outside my office. Daniel's stomach dropped. You were just walking by. I know. She met his eyes. I left the door open. That's on me. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, But you did. There was no accusation in her voice, just fact. Daniel nodded. I'm sorry, he said. For what? Hearing something I said in a semi-public space? Or for still being here after hearing it? That caught him off guard. Most people would have left, Victoria continued, pretended they heard nothing. Avoided me for the next month. She tilted her head slightly. But you came over here instead. You looked... Daniel stopped himself. What? Upset. Astute observation. I'm good at my job. This time she did smile, just barely. Fixing things? Something like that. The rain was soaking through Daniel's jacket now, cold water running down his spine. Victoria's hair hung in wet strands around her face, her expensive suit probably ruined. I can't be fixed, she said softly. In case that's what you're thinking. I wasn't. No? No, Daniel said. I was thinking you look cold and wet, and maybe we should have this conversation somewhere that isn't a parking lot in a thunderstorm. Victoria blinked. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. Just once, short and surprised. That's fair. There's a diner 3 blocks from here, Daniel heard himself say. Nothing fancy, but it's open late and the coffee's decent. Are you asking me to get coffee, Daniel? I'm suggesting we both get out of the rain before we catch pneumonia. That's not how pneumonia works. See? You're already teaching me things. Another almost smile. Victoria looked away toward the street, toward the rain-slicked pavement reflecting city lights. Daniel watched her think, watched her calculate whatever equation she was running in her head. Okay, she said finally. Okay? Coffee 3 blocks. Lead the way. Daniel hadn't actually expected her to say yes. Now that she had, he had no idea what came next. I should grab my truck. I'll walk. It's pouring. I noticed. She started walking, and Daniel had to jog a few steps to catch up. They walked in silence. The rain had settled into a steady rhythm, the kind of Seattle rain that felt less like weather and more like a permanent condition. Their footsteps splashed through puddles forming in the broken pavement. You don't have to do this, Victoria said after a block. Do what? Whatever this is, charity, pity, concern for your boss's mental state. Is that what you think this is? She didn't answer. I heard something, Daniel said. Something that sounded familiar. So I'm getting coffee with another human being who might be having a rough night. That's it. Familiar how? Daniel shoved his hands in his pockets. My ex-wife used to say something similar about me, about how I wasn't really there. And were you? No. The admission came easier than he expected. Not really. Not in the ways that mattered. Victoria was quiet for a moment. But you are now trying to be. They reached the diner, Pete's 24-hour kitchen, a greasy spoon that had probably looked dated in 1985. The neon sign buzzed and flickered. Through the rain-streaked windows, Daniel could see maybe 3 other customers spread across worn vinyl booths. He held the door open. Victoria hesitated just for a second, then walked inside. The warmth hit them immediately, along with the smell of burnt coffee and fryer grease. A waitress in her 50s looked up from behind the counter, took in their soaked appearance, and raised an eyebrow. Booth or counter? Booth, Daniel said. They slid into a corner booth, red vinyl patched with duct tape in 2 places. Victoria looked around like she'd entered a museum exhibit on diners past. Daniel grabbed napkins from the dispenser and offered her some. For your face, you've got... He gestured at his own cheek. She took them, dabbing at mascara smudges. I don't usually fall apart in parking lots. Could have fooled me. That earned him a sharp look, but there was something else behind it. Amusement, maybe. The waitress appeared with 2 mugs and a coffee pot. Menus? Just coffee, Victoria said. Same, Daniel added. The waitress poured without comment and disappeared. Victoria wrapped both hands around her mug, not drinking, just holding it. Her suit jacket dripped onto the vinyl seat. Daniel probably didn't look much better. So, she said. So, this is awkward. Little bit. I don't do this, Victoria said. Personal conversations with employees. It's a boundary issue. Want me to quit? No. She looked up, startled. That's not... I didn't mean... Kidding, Daniel said. Bad joke, sorry. She relaxed slightly. I'm not good at this. The casual thing. People think I am because I do the galas and the networking events, but that's different. That's performance. And this isn't? This is... She trailed off, staring into her coffee. I don't know what this is. Daniel took a sip. The coffee was bitter and old, exactly as promised. Could just be two people having a bad day. Is your day bad? My hot water heater's dying. My truck needs new brake pads I can't afford yet. And my daughter informed me this morning that she hates me because I won't let her get TikTok. So yeah, it's been better. How old is your daughter? 8. That seems young for TikTok. That's what I said. She said all her friends have it. I said her friends can enjoy their future therapy bills. Victoria smiled, a real one this time. You sound like a good father. I'm trying. Failing regularly, but trying. Trying counts. Does it? She met his eyes. I think so. Outside, lightning flickered, followed by a low rumble of thunder. The rain picked up again, hammering against the diner's windows. One of the other customers, an old man reading a newspaper at the counter, muttered something about the apocalypse. Victoria finally took a sip of her coffee, grimaced, and set it down. This is terrible. I said decent, not good. There's a difference? In Seattle, always. She laughed again, and Daniel realized he liked the sound. It was unguarded, real. Can I ask you something? Victoria said. Sure. Why did you come over? In the parking lot. You could have just driven away. Daniel considered lying, considered deflecting, but something about sitting in this shitty diner with rain pounding outside made honesty feel easier. Because you looked the way I felt, he said, 3 years ago, when everything fell apart and I realized I'd been sleepwalking through my own life. And I remember what it felt like when someone actually noticed. My sister. She showed up at my apartment with pizza and just sat with me while I tried to explain how I'd failed at the one thing that was supposed to matter. He turned the coffee mug in his hands. She didn't try to fix it, didn't give me advice, just stayed. Victoria was very still. That helped? More than anything else could have. So this is you paying it forward? Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of pretending I don't see when people are hurting. The words hung between them. Victoria looked away, jaw tight, and Daniel wondered if he'd pushed too far. I'm sorry, he started. I shouldn't have. My brother? Victoria said abruptly. The call you heard. That was my brother Evan. Daniel waited. He's 26. He's been in a wheelchair since he was 17. Car accident. Our parents were driving. She stared at her reflection in the window. They died on impact. Evan survived, barely. Jesus, Daniel breathed. I was 21, dropped out of grad school to take care of him, became his legal guardian, built my company while learning how to manage his care schedule, his physical therapy, his everything. Her voice stayed level, clinical. 9 years later, here we are. I'm a billionaire. He's still in a chair. And every person I've tried to date eventually realizes what they're signing up for and quietly exits stage left. How many? Daniel asked. 4 serious ones, countless casual attempts that fizzled before they started. She finally looked at him. Want to know the best part? They're never mean about it, never cruel, they just drift. Find reasons they're too busy, start returning calls slower, until one day they're just gone. And you let them go. What else am I supposed to do? Beg them to stay? Make them choose between me and their comfort? She shook her head. My life comes with complications. Not everyone can handle complications. So you just, what? Decided nobody would? I decided to stop hoping, Victoria said quietly. Hope is exhausting. Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was wrong, that the right person would stay, that she deserved better than resigned loneliness. But he'd learned the hard way that empty reassurances just made things worse. "Yeah," he said instead. "It really is." They sat in silence. The waitress made a pass, topped off their barely touched coffee, and vanished again. Rain drummed against the windows in waves. "Your turn," Victoria said. "My turn for what?" "To tell me why you're really still here at 10 p.m. on a Thursday, and don't say final rounds." Daniel sighed. "My daughter had a thing at school today, career day. They asked parents to come in and talk about their jobs." "You didn't go?" "I went. Talked about facilities management. Tried to make fixing toilets sound interesting to a room full of 8-year-olds. He smiled without humor. Emma was mortified. Her friend's dad is a pilot. Another kid's mom is a surgeon. And there's her dad talking about unclogging drains. Did she say that? Didn't have to. I saw her face. She's 8, Daniel. 8-year-olds are mortified by everything their parents do. I know, logically, I know. But it's still... He stopped. "Still feels like you're failing her," Victoria finished. "Yeah. Even though you showed up, even though you tried. Even though..." Victoria leaned back against the vinyl booth. "We're quite a pair, aren't we? Both convinced we're disappointing everyone." "Are we wrong?" "I don't know." She traced the rim of her mug with one finger. "Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe that's just what caring about something feels like. That's depressing. Welcome to adulthood." Daniel laughed despite himself. "You paint a beautiful picture. I'm an architect. We deal in reality, not fantasy." "Is that what you tell your clients?" "My clients pay me enough that I can tell them whatever I want." "Must be nice." "It has its moments." She paused. "And its costs." Thunder rolled again, closer this time. The lights flickered. The old man at the counter looked up briefly, then returned to his newspaper like power outages were just another Thursday. "I should probably go," Victoria said, but she didn't move. "Probably," Daniel agreed, also not moving. "My car's still at the office." "Mine too. Well, my truck. We walked here in a thunderstorm to drink bad coffee." "Seems like it." "That's not very smart." "No," Daniel said. "It's really not." Victoria smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Worth it, though." "Yeah?" "Yeah." They stayed another 20 minutes, talked about nothing important. Seattle traffic, the Mariners' losing streak, whether the Space Needle was overrated. Surface-level things that felt deeper somehow, sitting in that booth with rain hammering the windows and fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. When they finally left, the storm had eased to a steady drizzle. They walked back toward Hale Industries, slower this time, neither quite ready for the conversation to end. At the building entrance, Victoria stopped. "Thank you. For tonight." "For bad coffee?" "For seeing me." She said it simply, but Daniel heard what it cost her. "Anytime," he said, and meant it. Victoria pulled out her keys, then hesitated. "Daniel?" "Yeah?" "What you said about trying to be present, about showing up." She looked at him. "It matters. More than you think. Emma might not understand it now, but she will." "You don't know that." "I do, actually, because I had someone who showed up for me when nobody else did. And 9 years later, I still remember exactly how that felt." Daniel didn't know what to say to that. Victoria unlocked the door. "See you Monday." "Monday, Anne," Daniel confirmed. He waited until she was inside before walking to his truck. The engine caught on the first try this time, which felt like a small victory. As he pulled out of the parking garage, he glanced up at the 9th floor. The lights were off. Victoria Hale had gone home. Daniel drove through empty Seattle streets, past closed shops and sleeping houses, and tried not to think about the sound of her voice in that parking lot. Tried not to think about the weight of loneliness he'd seen in her eyes. Tried not to think about how much it had felt like looking in a mirror. His phone buzzed at a red light. "Rachel." "She's still asleep. I'm on the couch. Take your time." Daniel typed back. "Almost there. Thanks." The light changed. He drove on through the rain, through the dark, toward home, toward his daughter, toward the life he'd built from the pieces of his failed marriage. It wasn't much, but it was his. And somewhere across the city, in a building made of glass and steel, Victoria Hale was probably thinking the same thing about her own carefully constructed world. Two people, two separate lives, two different kinds of loneliness. Daniel had no idea how their stories would connect, or if they even should. He just knew that something had shifted tonight, something small but undeniable, like the first crack in a foundation, like the moment before everything changes. Monday came with gray skies and the kind of cold that worked its way into your bones. Daniel dropped Emma at school, watched her run toward her friends without looking back, and drove to work thinking about nothing in particular. Or trying to. The weekend had been normal. Groceries, laundry, a birthday party for one of Emma's classmates at a trampoline park where Daniel had stood with the other parents, making small talk about screen time and standardized testing. He'd texted Rachel on Sunday night, confirmed their usual Tuesday dinner, and gone to bed at a reasonable hour. He hadn't thought about Victoria Hale. Except he had, constantly, not in any specific way. Just flashes. The sound of her laugh in that diner, the way she'd held her coffee mug with both hands like she was trying to warm something deeper than her fingers. The exhaustion in her voice when she'd said hope was exhausting. Daniel parked in his usual spot at Hale Industries and told himself to get his head straight. It had been coffee, one conversation. It didn't mean anything. The building lobby was its usual Monday chaos, architects rushing with tube containers of blueprints, admin staff juggling coffee and phones, a delivery guy trying to navigate a dolly through the revolving doors. Daniel swiped his badge and took the service elevator to the basement. His office, if you could call it that, was a converted storage room next to the boiler. Metal desk, rolling chair with one wonky wheel, corkboard covered in work orders, and HVAC schedules. The fluorescent light above his desk flickered in a rhythm he'd learned to ignore. He hung his jacket on the back of the door and checked his email. 17 new messages since Friday. Half were automated system alerts. The rest were staff complaints about the temperature, the lighting, a stuck door on the third floor, a weird smell near the east stairwell. Daniel printed the work orders and started planning his route through the building. Carter. He looked up. Tom Brennan stood in the doorway, facilities director and Daniel's direct supervisor. Tom was 50-something, balding, with the permanent scowl of someone who'd seen every possible way a building could fall apart. Morning, Daniel said. Got a special request. Tom tossed a sticky note on Daniel's desk. 9th floor, Ms. Hale's office. Says the radiator's making noise. Daniel stared at the note. When did this come in? 20 minutes ago. She asked for you specifically. She did? Tom shrugged. Don't ask me. Maybe you're less annoying than the rest of us. Can you handle it this morning? Yeah, sure. Good. I'll be in the south building if you need me. Got 3 HVAC units acting up. Tom disappeared down the hallway. Daniel sat there, sticky note in hand. The radiator in Victoria's office had been fine on Friday. He'd checked it himself during his rounds. Maybe it had started making noise over the weekend, or maybe this was something else. He grabbed his tool bag and headed for the elevator. The 9th floor was quiet at 8:30. Most of the senior architects didn't roll in until 9 or later. Daniel walked past empty glass-walled offices toward the corner suite. Victoria's door was open. She stood at the window, phone pressed to her ear, looking out at the gray Seattle skyline. I understand the timeline, she was saying, but the structural engineers need another week minimum. We can't rush the foundation analysis just because the investors are impatient. Pause. Then the investors can hire someone else. I'm not signing off on shortcuts. She turned and saw Daniel. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or relief, before settling back into professional neutrality. I need to go, she said into the phone. We'll discuss this at the 3 o'clock. She hung up without waiting for a response. Morning, Daniel said. Morning. Victoria set her phone on the desk. Thank you for coming up. Tom said you had a radiator issue? Right, yes, the radiator. She gestured vaguely toward the wall. It's making a sound, sort of a clanking. Daniel walked over and crouched next to the old cast-iron radiator. He listened. Silence. He tapped the pipes. Nothing. He checked the valve. When does it usually make the noise? He asked. Mostly in the mornings, when it first kicks on. Is it making it now? No. Daniel sat back on his heels and looked up at her. Victoria met his eyes, and there it was. That same uncertainty he'd seen in the diner, like she was trying to decide if she'd made a mistake. It's not actually the radiator, is it? Daniel said quietly. No. She crossed her arms. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have lied. That was unprofessional. Why did you? Victoria moved to her desk, straightened a stack of papers that didn't need straightening. Because I wanted to say thank you for Thursday, and I didn't know how to do that without making it weird. So you invented a radiator problem? It seemed logical at the time. Daniel stood, brushing dust off his knees. You could have just sent an email. Would you have believed it? Probably not. Then there you go. She finally looked at him. I'm not good at this, at acknowledging when someone does something kind. My instinct is to compartmentalize and move on. But you didn't. No, Victoria said. I didn't. The office felt too small suddenly, or maybe Daniel was just too aware of the space between them, of the way she was looking at him like he was a puzzle she hadn't quite figured out. The radiator's fine, he said, picking up his tool bag. But if it starts making noise, let me know. Daniel, he stopped at the door. Would you want to get lunch sometime? The words came out rushed, like she'd been holding them back. Not here. Somewhere else. As a proper thank you. Daniel should have said no. Should have cited the boundary issue she'd mentioned in the diner. Should have remembered that getting involved with his boss, billionaire or not, was a spectacularly bad idea. Yeah, isetas, he said instead. I'd like that. Victoria's shoulders relaxed slightly. Friday? There's a place in Fremont I've been wanting to try. A Friday works. Noon? I'll meet you there. Daniel left before either of them could second-guess it. He took the stairs down, needing the physical movement to clear his head. What the hell was he doing? This wasn't him. He didn't do spontaneous lunch dates with women who lived in completely different universes. His phone buzzed. Rachel. Emma forgot her math homework. Can you drop it off? Back to reality. Daniel texted confirmation and headed for his truck. The week crawled. Daniel fixed a broken urinal on the 4th floor, replaced 3 burnt-out bulbs in the parking garage, tracked down the source of the weird smell near the east stairwell, a forgotten lunch bag behind a filing cabinet. He ate a sandwich in his truck like always, half listening to sports radio. Picked up Emma from school, helped with homework that seemed designed to confuse parents more than educate kids. Made dinner, did dishes, put Emma to bed. Normal, routine, safe. Except Wednesday night, when Emma asked him why he kept checking his phone. I'm not checking my phone, Daniel said, which was a lie. He'd checked it maybe 40 times since Tuesday. Yes, you are. You looked at it 3 times during dinner. I'm waiting for a message from Uncle Tom about work. Uh-huh. Emma gave him the skeptical look she'd inherited from her mother. Is it a girl? What? No. Why would you? Jenny's dad started checking his phone a lot before he got a girlfriend. Jenny said it was annoying. Daniel set down the dish he'd been washing. I don't have a girlfriend, Em. But you want one? I didn't say that. You didn't say you don't, either. When had his 8-year-old gotten so perceptive? Daniel dried his hands and sat down at the kitchen table. Emma climbed into the chair across from him, swinging her legs. If I did meet someone, Daniel said carefully, would that bother you? Emma shrugged. I don't know, maybe. Depends if she's nice. She'd be nice. So there is a she, hypothetically. That means yes and grown up. Emma picked at a sticker on the table. Would she live here? We're not anywhere near that, Em. I'm talking about maybe getting lunch with someone. That's it. Mom had lunch with Travis before he moved in. Daniel's jaw tightened. Sarah's boyfriend Travis had moved in 6 months ago. Emma spent every other weekend at their place. Came home talking about Travis's dog, and Travis's Nintendo Switch, and Travis's pool table. This is different, Daniel said. How? Because I'm not rushing into anything. Because I'm thinking about what's best for you. Because... He stopped. Because I don't want to screw this up. Emma looked at him with those serious brown eyes that were too old for 8. You won't. You don't know that. Yeah, I do. You're good at not screwing up. That's like your whole thing. Daniel didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Is that my thing? You always make my lunch even when you're tired. And you came to career day even though I know you didn't want to. And you fixed my bike even though you hate fixing bikes. She paused. Travis doesn't fix things. He just buys new ones. That's not... I'm just saying. Emma slid off her chair. If you want to have lunch with a girl, it's okay. I won't be weird about it. She headed toward her room, then stopped at the doorway. But Dad? Yeah? If she's mean to you, I'll know. And I'll be weird about it then. Daniel smiled despite himself. Deal. After Emma went to bed, Daniel sat on the couch with his phone. He'd saved Victoria's number from the work order system, which felt slightly stalkerish. He stared at the blank message screen for 10 minutes before typing. Still on for Friday? The reply came back almost immediately. Yes. Unless you're having second thoughts? No second thoughts. Good. See you then. Daniel set his phone down and leaned back. This was insane. He barely knew this woman. One conversation in a diner didn't constitute a relationship, and lunch on Friday wasn't a date. It was just two people eating food in proximity to each other. Except it felt like more than that. Thursday afternoon, the sky opened up. Not the usual Seattle drizzle, but a full-blown downpour that sent people scrambling for cover. Daniel was on the roof checking drainage when the rain hit, turning everything slick and treacherous. He should have gone back inside. Should have waited for the storm to pass. But water was already pooling near the northwest corner, and if it backed up into the ventilation system, they'd have problems. Daniel worked methodically, clearing debris from the drains, checking the seals around the HVAC units. Rain soaked through his jacket within minutes. His hands were numb, but the water was draining properly, which meant the offices below would stay dry. He was finishing up when his phone rang. Tom's number. Yeah? Carter, where are you? Tom's voice was tight. Roof. Why? We've got flooding in the archive room, basement level. Must be coming from outside. I need you down here now. Daniel swore and headed for the roof access. The stairs were a blur. He hit the basement running, following the sound of Tom shouting. The archive room was a disaster. Water poured from a ceiling panel near the back wall, cascading onto metal shelving units full of old blueprints and documents. Tom and another facilities guy were trying to move boxes, but there were hundreds of them. Where's it coming from? Daniel yelled over the noise. Storm drain backup outside. It's pushing through the foundation wall. Tom pointed. We need to stop it before we lose everything. Daniel didn't hesitate. He dropped his tool bag and started hauling boxes. His back screamed, his shoulders burned, but he kept moving because that's what you did. You showed up. You did the work. 15 minutes in, the door burst open. Victoria Hale stood there in her suit and heels, looking completely out of place in the flooding basement. What are you doing down here? Tom asked. Helping. Victoria kicked off her heels and waded into the water in her bare feet. She grabbed a box and carried it toward higher ground. Miss Hale, you don't need to... These are my designs, she said. 10 years of work. I'm not losing them. So Victoria worked alongside them. No hesitation, no concern for her expensive suit or her designer watch, or the fact that she was a billionaire doing manual labor in a flooded basement. Daniel found himself working near her, forming a chain of people passing boxes from the danger zone to safety. Water kept rising. The ceiling leak got worse, but they kept moving. There's more in the back, Victoria said, pointing to the far corner. Original drawings from the Meridian building. We can't replace those. I'll get them. Daniel waded through knee-deep water toward the back shelving. Wait. Victoria grabbed his arm. That section's unstable. The whole unit could come down. Then we better be quick. He didn't wait for her to argue. The water was cold enough to hurt, and the floor was slippery with mud and debris. Daniel reached the back shelving and started pulling boxes. Above him, the metal frame groaned. Daniel, come on! Victoria's voice urgent. He grabbed the last box just as the shelving unit started to tilt. Daniel lurched backward, lost his footing, and went down hard. Water closed over his head for a second before hands grabbed him, Victoria and Tom hauling him up. "You okay?" Victoria's face was inches from his, streaked with dirt and water. "Yeah, box?" "I got it." Tom held up the rescued container. "Let's move." They worked for another hour. Eventually, the building's main water shutoff kicked in, and the flooding slowed. Maintenance got the storm drain under control outside. By 6 p.m., the immediate crisis was over. Daniel sat on the basement floor, soaking wet, exhausted. Tom had gone to file an incident report. The other facilities guy had left to check the rest of the building. That left Daniel and Victoria alone in the ruined archive room, surrounded by stacked boxes and standing water. "Well," Victoria said, "that was exciting." Daniel laughed, too tired to stop himself. "Your definition of exciting is broken," says the man who climbed on a roof in a thunderstorm. "That's different. That's my job. This was mine." She gestured at the boxes. "Thank you for helping save them. You were down here too." "Because you were." Victoria sat down next to him, not seeming to care that the floor was wet. Her suit was ruined, her hair a mess, her bare feet covered in mud. You could have let Tom handle it. Could have said it wasn't your problem. Same could be said for you. "It's my building." "Exactly. You could have stayed in your office and let other people fix it, but you didn't." Victoria leaned her head back against the wall. "I hate standing on the sidelines." "I noticed." They sat in silence for a moment. Water dripped from the ceiling in a steady rhythm. Somewhere in the building above them, life continued. People finishing their workday, packing up, heading home to families in warm apartments and dry clothes. "Friday," Victoria said quietly. "I don't think I can do lunch." Daniel's stomach dropped. "Oh, okay. Not because I don't want to, but because I've been thinking about it all week, and I keep coming back to the same problem. Which is, you work for me. There's a power dynamic. If this goes wrong, you're the one who suffers. That's not fair. You're calling it off to protect me?" "Yes." Daniel turned to look at her. Victoria was staring straight ahead, jaw set, trying to look certain. "What if I don't want protection?" he asked. "That's not how this works." "Says who?" "Daniel." She finally met his eyes. "I'm your boss. I'm a billionaire. You're a single dad trying to make ends meet. The math doesn't work." "The math," Daniel repeated. "That's what you're worried about? Math?" "I'm worried about doing the right thing. By deciding what's best for me without asking." That stopped her. Victoria opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "I'm trying not to complicate your life. My life is already complicated. Single dad, remember? Failed marriage, broke most of the time, constantly worried I'm screwing up my kid. Adding lunch with someone I actually want to talk to doesn't make it more complicated. It makes it more interesting." "You barely know me." "I know you stayed in a flooded basement to save blueprints. I know you cried in a parking lot over your brother and then tried to pretend you were fine. I know you're terrified of hoping for something that might actually work out." He paused. "And I know you invented a fake radiator problem because you didn't know how else to say thank you." Victoria's breath caught. "That's not fair." "What's not fair?" "Using my own honesty against me." "I'm not using anything. I'm just telling you what I see." She looked at him for a long moment. Her walls were up. Daniel could see them, practically visible in the set of her shoulders, the guardedness in her eyes. But there were cracks, small ones, enough to see through. "What if you're wrong?" she asked quietly. "What if this is just two lonely people mistaking proximity for connection? Then we'll figure it out over lunch and go our separate ways. No harm done." "You really believe that?" "No," Daniel admitted, "but I'm willing to risk it anyway." Victoria's expression softened. "Why?" "Because I'm tired of playing it safe. I've spent 3 years rebuilding myself into someone reliable and present and good enough, and I am those things. But I'm also lonely as hell, and I don't want to be anymore." He met her eyes. "And I think maybe you're tired of it too." The words hung between them, Above, footsteps crossed the floor. A phone rang somewhere distant. The building settled and creaked the way old buildings do. Friday, Victoria said. Noon, Fremont. You sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Daniel smiled. Want to know something? What? I'm terrified. Of lunch? Of you? Of this? Of caring about something that might not work out? He stood and offered her his hand. But I figure if you can risk it, so can I. Victoria took his hand and let him pull her up. They stood there both soaked and muddy and exhausted, and Daniel realized this was probably the least romantic moment possible. We should get cleaned up, Victoria said. Probably. Neither of them moved. Daniel? Yeah? Thank you for seeing past the math. Thank you for the fake radiator problem. She laughed, and the sound echoed in the ruined archive room. They walked out together, leaving wet footprints across the basement floor. Tom found them in the hallway. Building's secure for the night. I'm having a restoration crew come in tomorrow to handle cleanup. Good, Victoria said. Send me the estimate. I want this handled properly. Will do, Ms. Hale. Tom looked between them, clearly noting their appearance, but said nothing. Carter, you good to lock up? Yeah, I got it. Tom left. Victoria retrieved her shoes from where she'd left them, but didn't put them on. Just held them, looking at Daniel. I should go home, she said. I'm supposed to call Evan tonight. Tell him I said hi. He doesn't know you exist. Yet. Victoria shook her head, but she was smiling. Confident. Hopeful. I thought hope was exhausting. It is, Daniel said, but I'm willing to be tired. She left without another word, but Daniel watched her go and felt something shift, something bigger than a conversation in a diner or a fake work order, or even a crisis in a flooded basement. It felt like the moment before jumping, like standing at the edge and deciding whether to trust that the ground would hold. Daniel finished his rounds mechanically, barely seeing what he was doing. Locked up the building. Drove home through rain that had settled back to Seattle normal. Rachel had picked Emma up from school and given her dinner, and Daniel found them both on the couch, watching some animated movie about talking animals. You're wet, Emma observed. Flooded basement at work. Gross. Very gross. Daniel kissed the top of her head. Thanks for staying, Rachel. No problem. Em and I made cookies. Well, mostly I made cookies while she ate chocolate chips. Did not, Emma protested. Rachel grinned. Sure, kid. She grabbed her jacket. You okay, Danny? You look weird. Long day. Huh. She gave him that look siblings give when they know you're full of it. Call me if you need to talk. After Rachel left, Daniel got cleaned up and joined Emma on the couch. She curled into his side without looking away from the TV, and Daniel wrapped an arm around her. Dad? Yeah, Em? Was today bad? Parts of it were good. Which parts were good? Daniel thought about Victoria in the basement, barefoot and determined, about the way she'd grabbed his arm to warn him about the unstable shelving, about her asking if he was okay with her face inches from his, both of them soaked and muddy and weirdly alive. The parts where I wasn't alone, he said. Emma seemed satisfied with that answer. They watched the rest of the movie in comfortable silence, and Daniel tried not to think about Friday. Tried not to build it up into something more than lunch, but his mind kept circling back to Victoria's question. What if this is just two lonely people mistaking proximity for connection? Maybe it was. Maybe they'd meet for lunch, run out of things to say, and realize the diner conversation had been a fluke. Maybe the math really didn't work. Or maybe, and this was the terrifying part, maybe it did. Daniel fell asleep on the couch with Emma tucked against him, the TV still playing. When he woke up at 11, his neck aching, Emma was already in her bed. He must have carried her there on autopilot. His phone showed 2 messages, one from Rachel. Whatever's going on, I'm here. The other from Victoria. I keep thinking about what you said, about being willing to be tired. I think maybe I am too. Daniel stared at the message for a long time before typing back, See you Friday. Her response came immediately. See you Friday. Friday morning, Daniel woke up at 5:30 to Emma shaking his shoulder. Dad! Dad, wake up! He bolted upright, heart hammering. What's wrong? Are you okay? I'm fine, but you're going to be late. Daniel squinted at his alarm clock. It's 5:30 in the morning. I don't need to be up for another hour. Yeah, but you have your lunch thing today. She sat on the edge of his bed, already dressed for school even though the bus didn't come until 7:40. You're nervous. I can tell. I'm not nervous. You checked your phone 6 times last night. How do you even... I wasn't asleep yet. You're a loud phone checker. Emma picked at a loose thread on his comforter. Is it with the radiator lady? Daniel sat up fully. What? The lady with the fake radiator problem. Aunt Rachel told me. Rachel needs to learn about confidentiality. She said you like her. The lady. Not the radiator. Daniel rubbed his face. Having relationship conversations with his 8-year-old at 5:30 a.m. wasn't how he'd planned to start the day. It's just lunch, Em. That's what you said on Monday. Now it's Friday, and you've been weird all week. I haven't been weird. You reorganized the pantry. Twice. You only do that when you're stressed. She wasn't wrong. Daniel sighed. Okay. Maybe I'm a little nervous. Why? Because I haven't done this in a long time, and I don't want to mess it up. Emma considered this seriously. What would messing it up look like? I don't know. Saying something stupid, being boring, her realizing I'm just a guy who fixes toilets and deciding she can do better. That's dumb. Thanks, kid. Really helpful. No, I mean, it's dumb that you think fixing toilets makes you boring. You're not boring. You know like a million facts about buildings, and you make really good pancakes, and you always know when I'm sad, even when I don't say anything. She paused. If she thinks you're boring, she's the boring one. Daniel pulled her into a hug. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just forget because I'm short. He laughed despite his nerves. Go eat breakfast. I'll drive you to school today. Really? But the bus? I want to. That okay? Emma grinned and ran toward the kitchen. Daniel heard the pantry open, cereal box rattle. He lay back down and stared at the ceiling. Just lunch. With a billionaire architect who made his chest tight every time she looked at him. No pressure. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Still meeting at noon? No judgment if you've reconsidered. Daniel typed back. I'll be there. Good. I was worried you developed sudden onset food poisoning. Would that have been better? Easier, maybe, but not better. Daniel smiled at his phone like an idiot. The morning dragged. Daniel drove Emma to school, sat through drop-off line behind a Tesla and a Range Rover while his truck made concerning noises. At work, he had 3 urgent requests before 9 a.m. A jammed printer on the 5th floor, a flickering light in the conference room, and someone's space heater that kept tripping the circuit breaker. He fixed them all on autopilot, mind elsewhere. At 11:30, Daniel went to the basement bathroom and changed out of his work clothes into the one nice shirt he owned that didn't have paint stains. Dark blue button-down Rachel had bought him last Christmas. He stared at himself in the spotted mirror and wondered what the hell he was doing. His phone rang. Rachel. Tell me you're not bailing, she said without preamble. I'm not bailing. You sound like you're bailing. I'm in the bathroom changing shirts. How did you even know? Emma texted me. She's worried you're going to panic. I'm not panicking. Danny, I can hear you panicking. Daniel leaned against the sink. What if this is a mistake? What if I'm reading this completely wrong and she just wants to say thanks for the basement thing and I've built it up into something it's not? Then you'll have a nice lunch and move on with your life. That's simple? That's simple. Rachel's voice softened. But I don't think that's what this is. No? No. Because Emma said you've been weird all week, and you only get weird when something actually matters to you, so stop overthinking and just go. Daniel checked his reflection one more time. What if she realizes I'm completely out of my depth here? Then she realizes you're human, which, spoiler alert, is probably what she likes about you in the first place. They hung up. Daniel threw his work shirt in his locker and headed for the parking garage. The restaurant Victoria had picked was in Fremont, 20 minutes away if traffic cooperated. He'd looked it up last night, Small French place, good reviews, prices that made his wallet hurt just reading the menu. The drive gave him too much time to think. About Victoria in the diner, rain-soaked and honest. About her in the basement, barefoot and determined. About the way she'd looked at him when she said she was tired of playing it safe too. Daniel parked 3 blocks away because street parking in Fremont was a nightmare. Walked past coffee shops and vintage stores, and a statue of Lenin that someone had dressed in a Santa hat even though Christmas was months away. The restaurant, Le Petit Zinc, had a blue awning and windows full of plants. He was 10 minutes early, stood outside like an idiot, debating whether to go in or wait. Decided waiting on the street was creepier than waiting inside. The interior was small, maybe 10 tables, exposed brick walls covered in French movie posters. A hostess looked up as he entered. Reservation? Maybe. Under Hale. The hostess checked her list. Ms. Hale called. She's running about 15 minutes late. Would you like to wait at the table or the bar? Daniel's stomach sank. Table's fine. She led him to a corner booth. Daniel sat, trying not to look as out of place as he felt. The other diners were the Fremont lunch crowd, tech workers in expensive casual wear, older couples who probably lived in the neighborhood, a woman working on a laptop while eating soup. He checked his phone. No messages. Maybe she'd changed her mind. Maybe she was stuck in traffic. Maybe this was her polite way of standing him up. Daniel was on the verge of leaving when the door opened and Victoria walked in. She looked different. It took him a second to figure out why. She wasn't wearing a suit, just dark jeans and a cream sweater, hair down instead of pulled back. She looked younger, less guarded. She spotted him and headed over, and Daniel stood because his mother had drilled basic manners into him even if everything else felt foreign. I'm sorry, Victoria said, sliding into the booth across from him. Conference call ran long. I tried to escape, but the client kept asking questions. It's fine. I wasn't waiting long. You're a terrible liar. I've been told that. A waiter appeared with menus and water. They ordered. Victoria got the croque madame. Daniel went with a sandwich he couldn't pronounce correctly and didn't try to. The waiter left. Silence stretched between them. Not comfortable. Not exactly uncomfortable. Just waited with the fact that they were here doing this, whatever this was. So, Victoria said. So, this is awkward. Little bit. She smiled. I thought about canceling 17 times this morning. Only 17? I hit 20 by 9 a.m. What stopped you? Daniel met her eyes. My daughter told me I was being dumb. That fixing toilets doesn't make me boring. Emma, right? Yeah. She's 8 going on 30. Scary perceptive. Does she know about this? About me? She knows I'm having lunch with someone. Doesn't know the details. Daniel paused. Does that bother you? No. I think it's sweet that you talk to her about your life. I try. My ex used to say I shut her out emotionally, so now I probably overcorrect by telling Emma too much. I doubt that's possible with kids. They always want to know everything anyway. The waiter returned with their food. Victoria's croque madame looked like something from a magazine spread. Daniel's sandwich was massive and slightly intimidating. They ate in silence for a moment. The food was good. Better than good. But Daniel barely tasted it. He was too aware of Victoria across from him, the way she cut her food into precise pieces, the slight tension in her shoulders that suggested she was just as nervous as he was. Can I ask you something? Victoria said. Sure. Why did you say yes? To this? To lunch with your boss who you barely know and who comes with approximately 1,000 complications? Daniel set down his sandwich. Honest answer? Please. Because when you showed up in that basement, barefoot and covered in mud, trying to save blueprints like your life depended on it, I saw someone who cared about the work, about the details, about protecting what mattered. He met her eyes, and I realized I wanted to know that person better. Victoria was very still. That's a good answer. It's the truth. Truth is better than good. She took a sip of water. I said yes because you didn't look at me like I was a problem to solve. In the parking lot, in the diner, even in the basement when everything was chaos, you just saw me. Not the company or the money or the reputation, just me. Is that rare? You have no idea. They fell into easier conversation after that. Victoria told him about the Meridian building, her first major project that almost bankrupted her but established her reputation. Daniel told her about the time he'd accidentally locked himself in a mechanical room and had to call Tom to let him out. "You're joking," Victoria said. "Wish I was. I was in there for 3 hours. Tom still brings it up at company meetings." She laughed, and Daniel realized he'd been chasing that sound all week, the unguarded version, the real one. "What made you go into facilities management?" Victoria asked. Daniel shrugged. "Fell into it, honestly. I was doing construction work after high school, got hurt, nothing major, just tweaked my back enough that heavy lifting became a problem. A buddy's dad ran facilities for an office building, said they needed someone detail-oriented who could troubleshoot. Started there at 22. Been doing it ever since." "Do you like it?" "Most days it's steady, predictable. Nobody's life depends on whether I fix a toilet right. But sometimes I wonder if I should have pushed for more, gone to school, built something instead of just maintaining what other people build." Victoria leaned forward slightly. "You know what my first architecture professor told me? That maintenance is just as creative as design. That anyone can draw a beautiful building, but making it actually function, making all the systems work together, keeping it alive for decades, that requires real understanding. You're just saying that to make me feel better." "I'm saying it because it's true. Half the architects I work with design things that look amazing and function terribly because they never think about maintenance. You probably know more about buildings than most of them." Daniel felt something warm in his chest. "Thanks. I mean it." They talked through the rest of lunch, about Seattle, about the rain, about whether the Mariners would ever actually win anything. Safe topics that felt deeper than they should. When the check came, Daniel reached for it. Victoria grabbed it first. "I invited you, she said. "I know, but Daniel, I'm a billionaire. Let me buy you lunch." "That's not..." "It feels weird." "Why?" "Because I should be able to pay for my own meal." Victoria set the check down between them. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. You're going to let me pay today, and next time, if there is a next time, you can pick somewhere cheap and pay. Deal?" "You're assuming there'll be a next time." "I'm hopeful," she said, and the echo of his own words made him smile. "Deal." They walked out into gray afternoon light. The rain had held off, but clouds promised it wouldn't last. Victoria's car, a sleek black Tesla, was parked half a block away. Daniel's truck was in the opposite direction. "Thank you," Victoria said, "for meeting me, for taking the risk. Thank you for the fake radiator problem." She laughed. "I'm never going to live that down, am I?" "Probably not." They stood there, neither quite ready to leave. Daniel shoved his hands in his pockets. "Victoria?" "Yeah?" "You said you wanted me to know the person behind the reputation. I'd like that, but I need you to know something too." "What?" "I'm not good at casual. I tried it after my divorce and it felt wrong. So if this is just lunch and we're going to go back to being professional strangers on Monday, I need to know now." Victoria looked at him for a long moment. "What if I said, I want more than lunch, more than professional strangers? Then I'd ask what that looks like." "I don't know yet, but I'd like to figure it out, if you're willing." Daniel felt that jumping feeling again, the edge of something sensation. "I'm willing." "Even though it's complicated?" "Especially because it's complicated. Complicated means it matters." Victoria smiled, and this time it reached her eyes completely. "I need to tell you something about why this is so hard for me." "Okay." "Not here. Would you want to meet my brother? Tomorrow. At my place. Well, his place. Our place." She was tripping over words, nervous in a way he'd never seen. "I need you to understand the whole picture before we go any further." Daniel's heart rate kicked up. "Yeah, I can do that." "Are you sure? Because this is the part where people usually..." "Victoria." He said her name gently. "I'm sure." She gave him an address in Shoreline, told him 2 o'clock. Then she got in her car and drove away, leaving Daniel standing on the sidewalk trying to process what had just happened. His phone buzzed before he'd made it back to his truck. Rachel. Well? Good. Really good. Details, Danny. I need details. Later. Have to get back to work. You're killing me. Daniel smiled and pocketed his phone. The drive back to Hale Industries felt shorter than the drive out. He changed back into his work clothes, checked his afternoon schedule, and tried to focus on the 3 HVAC issues Tom had flagged. But his mind kept circling back to Victoria's invitation, to the nervousness in her voice when she'd asked, to the feeling that tomorrow was going to change everything. The rest of Friday passed in a blur. Daniel fixed what needed fixing, answered what needed answering, and left at 5:30 sharp to pick up Emma from Rachel's. "You look different," Rachel said when he arrived. "I look the same." "No, you look lighter, like someone let some air out." Emma appeared in the hallway. "Did she like you?" What? I want to know." Daniel glanced at Rachel, who just shrugged like, "This is your mess, figure it out." "Yeah," Daniel said, "I think she did." "Are you going to see her again?" "Tomorrow, actually." Emma's eyes went wide. "Really? Really? She wants me to meet her brother." Rachel whistled low. "That's serious." "It's just, meeting the family is always serious, Danny, especially this fast." Daniel hadn't thought about it that way. Now anxiety crept back in. What if Evan didn't like him? What if seeing Victoria with her brother made Daniel realize the responsibility was too much? What if this whole thing fell apart before it even started? "You're thinking too much again," Rachel said. "Probably." "Just be yourself. That's what she likes, right? The you part." "I guess." "Then stop guessing and just show up." Saturday morning, Daniel woke up with his stomach in knots. He made pancakes for Emma, got her set up with a friend's mom who was taking the kids to the aquarium, and then stood in his closet trying to figure out what you wear to meet your maybe girlfriend's disabled brother. He settled on jeans and a gray Henley, casual but not sloppy. The address Victoria had given him was in Shoreline, a quiet neighborhood north of the city. Daniel pulled up to a modest blue house with a ramp leading to the front door and a well-maintained yard. Not what he'd expected for a billionaire's home. He sat in his truck for a minute, gathering courage. Then he got out and knocked. Victoria answered wearing leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, hair in a ponytail, no makeup. She looked nervous. "Hi," she said. "Hi. Come in. Evan's in the living room." Daniel followed her inside. The house was warm, lived in, photos on the walls, Victoria and a young man who had to be Evan, at various ages. Some showed 2 adults who must have been their parents. The furniture was comfortable, not fancy. A hospital bed was set up in what should have been a dining room. In the living room, a young man sat in a wheelchair by the window. He had Victoria's dark hair and sharp features, but where she carried tension, he seemed relaxed. He looked up as they entered. "You must be Daniel," Evan said. "My sister's been texting about you all week." "Evan," Victoria said, a warning in her voice. "What?" "You have been." He grinned at Daniel. "She gets weird when she likes someone, starts reorganizing things. I've had to stop her from alphabetizing the bookshelf 3 times. Daniel couldn't help but smile. "She told you about me." "Are you kidding? You're all she talks about. Daniel fixed this." Daniel said that. Daniel has really nice hands, apparently. "Oh my God!" Victoria's face went red. "I did not say that." "You absolutely did. Last night. You were on the phone with someone and you said Daniel has carpenter hands even though he's not a carpenter." Daniel looked at his hands, suddenly self-conscious. Victoria looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her. "I'm Evan, by the way," the young man continued, wheeling closer to offer his hand. The embarrassing younger brother. Daniel shook it. "Daniel, the guy with apparently nice hands. See, he's funny. You said he was funny." Evan wheeled back. "Want something to drink? Vic makes terrible coffee, but we have soda." "I'll take a soda." Victoria escaped to the kitchen. Daniel sat on the couch, trying not to feel like he was being evaluated. Evan studied him openly. "So," Evan said. "Facilities manager." "That's right. You fix things." "Pretty much." "That's good. Vic needs someone who fixes things. She spent the last 9 years trying to fix me." Evan! Victoria's voice came from the kitchen. I'm just being honest. He lowered his voice conspiratorially. She hates when I'm honest about the situation, thinks it makes people uncomfortable. Does it? Daniel asked. Usually, but you don't look uncomfortable. You look curious. I am. Evan nodded approvingly. Good. Curious is better than pitying. He shifted in his chair. What did Vic tell you about me? That you were in an accident, that your parents didn't make it, that she took care of you. That's the sanitized version. Want the real one? Daniel glanced toward the kitchen. Victoria appeared in the doorway with 3 sodas, her expression unreadable. It's okay, she said quietly. He can tell you. Evan popped the tab on his soda. I was 17, senior year, baseball scholarship to UW, whole life planned out. Then some drunk asshole ran a red light going 60 in a 35 zone. He said it matter-of-factly, no emotion. Mom and Dad died instantly. I spent 3 months in a coma. When I woke up, I couldn't feel anything below my waist. Evan, Victoria said softly. He should know, Vic. If he's going to be around, he should know what he's walking into. Daniel sat forward. I appreciate that. Good. Because here's the thing. I need help. A lot of help. Physical therapy 3 times a week. Occupational therapy twice a week. Doctor's appointments. Medication schedules. Someone to help me transfer in and out of bed, in and out of the shower. Victoria does most of it. Has since I was 17. I have nurses, Victoria interjected, during the day. But you're here every night, every weekend, every holiday. Evan looked at Daniel. Every guy she's dated has said they're fine with it, that they understand. And for a while they are. Then they start making comments about how much time she spends here, about how she should put me in a facility, about how she's 26, 27, 28 years old and shouldn't be sacrificing her life for me. I've never said you were a sacrifice, Victoria said, voice tight. I know you haven't, but they did, and eventually they left. Evan met Daniel's eyes. So I need to know right now, are you going to do the same thing? Because if you are, leave now. Don't waste her time. Don't make her hope for something that's going to fall apart in 6 months when you realize what you signed up for. The room went silent. Victoria stood frozen in the doorway, and Daniel realized this was a test. Not from Evan, from both of them. They'd been through this enough times to have a system. Let the guy see the reality. See if he runs. Daniel took a breath. Can I be honest? Please, Evan said. I don't know if I'm going to stay. I don't know if this thing with your sister is going to work out. I've been divorced 3 years, and I'm still figuring out how to be a decent father to my own kid, let alone navigate a relationship with someone whose life is infinitely more complicated than mine. He paused. But I know I'm not going to leave because of you, because of this situation. If I leave, it'll be because Victoria and I don't work, not because she has responsibilities that matter to her. Evan studied him. That's a carefully worded answer. It's an honest one. You really don't know if you'll stay? No. But I'm here anyway. That's got to count for something. A slow smile spread across Evan's face. Vic, I like him. Victoria let out a breath she'd been holding. Yeah? Yeah, he didn't make promises he can't keep. That's a first. She came and sat next to Daniel on the couch, close enough that their shoulders touched. Sorry, that was intense. It's okay. No, it's not. Evan just interrogated you. I would have done the same thing, Daniel said. If Emma were in his position and some guy was sniffing around. Sniffing around? Evan laughed. That's one way to put it. They spent the next hour talking. Evan told stories about Victoria in college, before the accident, when she'd been on track to become a professor. Victoria told stories about Evan's baseball career, the scholarship offers, the future that got erased in one moment. It should have been depressing. Instead, it felt real, raw but real. Around 4, a nurse arrived, middle-aged woman named Carol, who greeted Daniel like she already knew about him. Probably did, if Victoria's texting habits were anything like Evan described. I should go, Daniel said, standing. Wait. Victoria followed him to the door. Outside on the porch, she wrapped her arms around herself. Thank you for being honest with Evan, for not making promises. I meant what I said. I don't know how this plays out. I know, that's why it meant something. She looked at him. 4 men have sat on that couch. 4 men who said all the right things, made all the right promises, and all 4 of them left when it got hard. When did it get hard? Different timelines. The shortest was 2 months. The longest was almost a year. But they all got to the same place eventually, realizing that dating me meant dating this whole situation, and they couldn't handle it. Daniel shoved his hands in his pockets. That must have hurt. It stopped hurting around guy 3. By 4, I just felt stupid for hoping. And now? Now I'm terrified, Victoria admitted, because I'm hoping again, and I don't know if I can survive another person leaving. Daniel wanted to promise he wouldn't, wanted to say all the things those other guys probably said, but he just told Evan he wouldn't make promises he couldn't keep. I'm scared too, he said instead, of messing this up, of hurting you, of not being enough. You think you're not enough? I'm a facilities manager who drives a truck that's mostly rust and prayers. You're a billionaire with more responsibility before breakfast than I have all week. The gap's pretty wide, Victoria. The gap is just logistics. It's not who we are. Isn't it, though? Who we are is shaped by what we do, what we carry. Victoria stepped closer. Then let me tell you who I think you are. You're someone who showed up to a parking lot in a thunderstorm because you heard someone crying, who climbed into a flooded basement to save blueprints that weren't even yours, who drove to Shoreline on a Saturday to meet a disabled kid who was probably going to grill you about your intentions. She met his eyes. You're someone who shows up, even when it's hard, even when it would be easier to walk away. That's just basic decency. You'd be surprised how rare that is. They stood there on the porch, autumn afternoon fading into evening. Daniel could hear Evan and Carol laughing about something inside. I should tell you something, Daniel said. About my marriage. About why it failed. Okay. Sarah didn't leave because I was a bad person. She left because I was absent even when I was present. I'd sit across from her at dinner and be thinking about work, about bills, about anything except actually being there with her. He swallowed. She said it was like being married to a ghost, and she was right. That's not who you are now. How do you know? Because ghosts don't show up in basements during floods. Ghosts don't drive to Shoreline to meet their maybe girlfriend's brother. Ghosts don't admit when they're scared. Victoria reached out and took his hand. You're here. Actually here. I can feel the difference. Daniel looked at their joined hands. Hers was smaller, softer, but the grip was firm, certain. I want to try this, he said. Whatever this is, but I need to go slow. For Emma, for me, for you. Slow is good. Slow I can do. Even though you're used to building skyscrapers in 18 months? Victoria smiled. Buildings are easy. People are complicated, says the billionaire architect. Says the woman who's terrified of hoping. Daniel squeezed her hand. Then let's be terrified together. She kissed him. Just quick, just soft, but it landed in his chest like something taking root. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright. Same time next week? She asked. I'll bring Emma, if that's okay. She's been asking. Really? Really, she wants to meet the radiator lady. Victoria laughed, and Daniel realized he'd made it his mission to collect that sound, to earn it, to make sure she had reasons to keep making it. He drove home as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that Seattle saved for special occasions. His phone buzzed at a red light. Rachel. How'd it go? Good, really good. Details Monday. Emma and I want the full report. You're both terrible. We know. That's why you love us. Daniel pulled into his driveway and sat in his truck for a moment. Through the window, he could see Rachel and Emma in the kitchen, probably making dinner. His life. His people. His responsibility. And now, maybe, there was room for one more person, one more piece of complicated. He went inside to his daughter's hug and his sister's interrogation, and for the first time in 3 years, Daniel felt like he was building something instead of just maintaining what remained. It was terrifying. It was hopeful. It was exactly what he needed. The following Saturday, Daniel sat in his truck outside the blue house in Shoreline with Emma beside him, both of them nervous for different reasons. What if he doesn't like me? Emma asked for the third time. He'll like you. But what if he thinks I'm annoying? Kids can be annoying. You're not annoying. Mom says I ask too many questions. Daniel looked at his daughter. She was wearing her favorite purple shirt and had insisted on bringing a drawing she'd made, a picture of a house with 4 stick figures standing in front of it. He'd asked who they were. She'd said it was a surprise. Evan likes questions, Daniel said, and Victoria told me he's excited to meet you. She did? Would I lie? Emma considered this. No, you're a bad liar. Aunt Rachel says it's your worst quality. Remind me to thank Rachel for that assessment. They got out of the truck. Daniel carried the cookies Emma had insisted they bake last night. Chocolate chip, slightly burned on the edges because he'd gotten distracted answering a work email. Emma clutched her drawing like it was a legal document. Victoria opened the door before they knocked. She was wearing jeans and a blue sweater, hair loose, and when she smiled at Emma, Daniel's chest did something complicated. You must be Emma, Victoria said. You're really pretty, Emma blurted out. Dad said you were pretty, but I thought he was exaggerating because boys exaggerate, but you're actually really pretty. Daniel said, mortified. But Victoria laughed. Thank you. And you're exactly as smart as your dad said you were. He talks about me constantly. I know you hate TikTok, love purple, and make the best fort construction in Seattle. Emma beamed. Can I meet Evan? He's been waiting for you. Come on. They followed her inside. Evan was in the living room, but he'd moved his wheelchair closer to the coffee table where he'd set up a jigsaw puzzle. Emma, right? Evan said. Your dad told me you like puzzles. Emma's eyes went wide. You set this up for me? Figured we could work on it together. It's 1,000 pieces. Fair warning, I'm terrible at puzzles. That's okay, I'm really good at them. Emma didn't hesitate. She sat right down on the floor next to his wheelchair and started sorting edge pieces like she'd known Evan her whole life. Daniel stood there, slightly stunned. Victoria touched his arm. Coffee? She asked quietly. Yeah, coffee. In the kitchen, Victoria poured from a pot that smelled significantly better than the diner version. Daniel leaned against the counter, watching through the doorway as Emma explained her puzzle strategy to Evan. She's amazing, Victoria said. She's 8. 8-year-olds have no fear. It's not about fear, it's about seeing a person instead of a situation. Victoria handed him a mug. She didn't even glance at the wheelchair. Should I have prepared her more? I just told her Evan was in a wheelchair, and that he was your brother, and that he was really cool. That was perfect. Victoria moved to stand beside him, both of them watching the living room. Most kids stare, or they ask really loud questions about why he can't walk. Emma just went straight to puzzles. That's because puzzles are the most important thing in her world right now. Last week it was rocks. Week before that, origami. What's next week? No idea. That's the terrifying part of parenting. You never know what's coming. They drank coffee in comfortable silence. In the living room, Emma was telling Evan about her school's upcoming talent show and how she wanted to do magic tricks but didn't know any magic tricks, and could he help her think of some because her dad was useless at magic. I'm right here, Daniel called out. I know, Emma called back. That's why I said it loud enough for you to hear. Evan cracked up. I like her. Can we keep her? That's not how custody works, Daniel said, but he was smiling. The afternoon unfolded in easy pieces. Emma and Evan worked on the puzzle. Daniel helped Victoria fix a loose cabinet hinge in the kitchen. Carol, the nurse, arrived at 2 and greeted Emma like they were old friends, even though they'd never met. Around 3, Emma announced she was hungry. Victoria made grilled cheese sandwiches, nothing fancy, just white bread and American cheese, and they ate at the kitchen table, 4 of them, like a family. The thought hit Daniel hard enough that he nearly dropped his sandwich. You okay? Victoria asked quietly. Yeah, just thinking. About? How normal this feels. Her expression softened. Yeah, it does. After lunch, Emma showed Evan her drawing. Daniel watched his daughter explain each stick figure, herself, Daniel, Evan, and Victoria standing in front of a house that looked suspiciously like the blue one they were currently sitting in. This is us, Emma said. In the future, when we all know each other better. Evan looked at the drawing for a long moment. When he looked up, his eyes were bright. Can I keep this? Really? Really, I'm going to put it on my wall. Emma threw her arms around him without hesitation, just hugged him like hugging people in wheelchairs was the most natural thing in the world. Evan hugged her back, and Daniel saw Victoria turn away quickly, wiping at her eyes. They left around 5. Emma fell asleep in the truck on the way home, drawing rolled up in her lap. Daniel carried her inside, got her changed into pajamas without fully waking her, and tucked her into bed. His phone buzzed as he was closing her door. Victoria, thank you for bringing her. Evan hasn't stopped talking about how cool she is. She hasn't stopped talking about him either, currently asleep mid-sentence about puzzle strategies. She's special, Daniel. I know. You're doing a good job. With her. With all of it. Daniel stared at the message. When was the last time someone had said that? When was the last time he'd believed it? Thanks. That means a lot. See you Monday? See you Monday. But Monday brought complications. Daniel was replacing a broken light fixture on the 7th floor when Tom found him. Got a problem, Tom said. What kind of problem? The kind where HR wants to talk to you, now. Daniel's stomach dropped. Why? Didn't say, but Janet from HR doesn't usually summon people for good reasons. The HR office was on the 3rd floor, a sterile space with motivational posters about teamwork and a desk covered in neat stacks of paperwork. Janet Palmer was 50-something, efficient, and scary in the way people who control your employment are scary. Daniel, sit down. She gestured to a chair. He sat. I'll get right to it. We've received some concerns about your relationship with Ms. Hale. The words hit like cold water. My relationship? Several employees have noticed you spending time together, extended conversations, lunch off-site, visits to her office that seem beyond the scope of your facility's duties. Janet folded her hands on her desk. I need to know if there's a personal relationship developing. Daniel's mind raced. Lying would be stupid, but admitting it could cost him his job. We've had lunch twice and we're friends. Friends? Yes. Daniel, I need you to understand the position this puts the company in. Ms. Hale is not just your boss, she's the CEO. The power dynamic is significant. If this relationship goes south, the company could face serious liability. It's not like that. We're just getting to know each other. But you are interested in her, romantically. There was no point denying it. Yes. Janet sighed. I appreciate your honesty. But this is exactly the kind of situation our policies are designed to prevent. I'm going to need to document this conversation, and I'd strongly advise you to reconsider pursuing anything further. You're telling me I can't see her? I'm telling you that continuing a romantic relationship with the CEO while you're her employee creates problems for everyone. If you choose to proceed, one of you would need to change positions or leave the company. Daniel felt the walls closing in. I can't afford to quit. I have a daughter. I need this job. I understand, which is why I'm hoping you'll make the right decision here. He left HR in a daze, walked back to the basement, sat at his desk, and stared at nothing. His phone buzzed. Victoria, lunch today? Daniel typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on, Can we talk later? Something came up. Everything okay? Yeah, just work stuff. I'll call you tonight. He didn't call her that night, or the next. He threw himself into work, avoiding the 9th floor, eating lunch in his truck, staying busy enough that he didn't have to think about the choice he was being forced to make. Wednesday evening, Victoria showed up at his house. Daniel answered the door in sweatpants and a ratty t-shirt, completely unprepared for her standing on his porch in the rain. You've been avoiding me, she said. I haven't. Daniel, don't lie. You're terrible at it, remember? He stepped aside to let her in. Victoria stood in his small living room, water dripping from her jacket onto his worn carpet, and he felt the gap between their worlds more acutely than ever. Where's Emma? Victoria asked. Rachel's. It's Wednesday. They do dinner and a movie. So we can talk. Victoria? HR called you in, didn't they? Daniel sank onto the couch. How did you know? Because they called me in too, asked if I was having an inappropriate relationship with an employee. She sat next to him. I told them the truth, that we'd been on 2 dates and that I intended to continue seeing you. You what? I told them the truth. Do you understand what that means? For me, I could lose my job, Victoria. I can't lose my job. I know. Then why would you? Because I'm tired of hiding, tired of pretending, tired of letting fear make my decisions. She turned to face him, and because I think what we have is worth fighting for. Daniel stood, paced to the window. You don't get it. You're the CEO. If this goes bad, you're fine. You own the company. But me? I'm just the guy who fixes toilets. I'm replaceable. You're not replaceable to me. That's not the point. Then what is the point, Daniel? He spun to face her. The point is that I have a daughter who depends on me, a mortgage I can barely afford, a life that doesn't have room for grand gestures and fighting the system. I need stability. I need safe. And I'm not safe. No, you're the opposite of safe. You're complicated and messy and everything I swore I wouldn't do again. Victoria stood. Then why did you? Why did you show up in that parking lot? Why did you come to lunch? Why did you bring Emma to meet Evan? Because I'm an idiot who thought maybe this could work. And now? Now I'm scared. Because HR made it very clear that this relationship puts me in an impossible position. Either I quit, or we stop seeing each other, or I risk everything I've built for the past 3 years. Victoria's face hardened. So what are you saying? Daniel felt the words forming, felt himself reaching for the safe choice, the smart choice, the choice that protected Emma and his job and his carefully reconstructed life. I think we need to stop, he said quietly, before this gets worse, before Emma gets more attached, He stopped. Before you what? Before I fall any harder than I already have. The room went silent. Rain hammered against the windows. Somewhere down the street, a car alarm went off. Okay, Victoria said finally, if that's what you want. It's not what I want. It's what makes sense. Since when do you care about what makes sense? Since I became a single father responsible for another human being's entire life. Victoria grabbed her jacket. You know what I think? I think you're scared, not of losing your job, not of the complications. You're scared of actually having something that matters, something that might work out. That's not fair. Isn't it? You've spent 3 years rebuilding yourself into someone safe, someone who doesn't take risks, someone who shows up but never fully commits. She moved toward the door. Well, congratulations, Daniel. You've succeeded. You're exactly as safe as you wanted to be. Victoria, she turned back. I told HR that you were worth it, that what we have is worth fighting for, but I can't fight for both of us. If you want safe, I can't give you that. I come with Evan and late-night emergencies and a life that's permanently complicated. Her stars is bright sun stars. Her voice cracked. But I thought maybe you understood that you saw me anyway. I do see you. No, you see the complications. You see the risks. But you don't see that I'm standing here, terrified, asking you to choose me anyway. She opened the door. Every man I've ever dated has left, and I convinced myself it was because of Evan, because of my life, because of all the external factors. But maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe I'm just not worth staying for. That's not true. Then prove it. She left. Daniel stood in his living room, listening to her car start, listening to it drive away, and felt like he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. He called Rachel. I screwed up, he said when she answered. What did you do? He told her everything. The HR meeting, the ultimatum, Victoria showing up, the fight. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. So let me get this straight. You found someone who makes you happy, who your daughter adores, who you actually want to be around, and you're walking away because it's complicated? It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple, Danny. You're choosing fear over happiness. I'm choosing stability over chaos. You're choosing to be alone, Rachel said bluntly. Just like you have been for 3 years, safe and alone. I have Emma. Emma's 8. In 10 years, she'll be gone, off to college, living her own life. And you'll still be sitting in that house, fixing things that don't need fixing, telling yourself you made the right choice. That's not... When Sarah left, you blamed yourself, said you weren't present enough. And you've spent 3 years overcorrecting, being so present, so careful, so controlled that you've forgotten how to actually live. Rachel's voice softened. I love you. Emma loves you. But we can't be your whole life. You need to let someone else in. What if I can't do it? What if I'm not capable of being what she needs? What if you are, and you're just too scared to find out? Daniel sat on his couch after they hung up, looked around his living room, the furniture he'd bought at a thrift store after Sarah took the good stuff, the TV that was a generation out of date, the framed photo of Emma on the bookshelf next to his high school diploma. This was his life. Small, safe, controllable, and suddenly, he hated it. Thursday morning, Daniel called in sick to work for the first time in 8 months. Drove to Shoreline, knocked on the blue door. Carol answered. She's not here. Where is she? Work. Where she's been since 4 a.m. apparently. Evan says she's in full avoidance mode. Daniel drove to Hale Industries, took the elevator to the 9th floor. Victoria's door was closed, which it never was. He knocked. I'm busy, her voice called. It's me. Silence. Then, come in. Victoria sat at her desk surrounded by blueprints and coffee cups. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were red. What do you want, Daniel? I want to apologize for Wednesday, for what I said. Apology noted. Was there anything else? Yeah, I want to tell you that you were right. I was scared. I am scared. Terrified, actually. He moved closer to her desk. But I'm more scared of waking up in 10 years and realizing I let you walk away because I was too much of a coward to fight for something real. Victoria looked up. What about your job? I'll figure it out. Maybe I transfer to another building. Maybe I find something else. I don't know. But I'm done letting fear make my decisions. Daniel. No, let me finish. You said every man you've dated has left, that you're not worth staying for. But that's wrong. You're worth everything, worth the complications, worth the risk, worth fighting HR and job hunting and whatever else comes. He took a breath. I'm not saying this is going to be easy. I'm not saying I won't screw up, but I'm saying I want to try, if you'll let me. Victoria stood, came around the desk, looked at him with those dark eyes that had first caught him in a parking lot in the rain. I'm going to hurt you, she said quietly. Eventually. I'm going to be too busy or too stressed or too focused on Evan. I'm going to forget important dates and cancel plans and ask too much of you. Probably. And you're going to resent me for it, for the complications, for making your life harder. Maybe. So why are we doing this? Daniel reached for her hand, because when I'm with you, I'm not just present, I'm alive. And I've spent 3 years being present without being alive, and I can't do it anymore. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. That's a really good answer. Yeah? Yeah. She kissed him. Not careful this time, not tentative, like she was claiming something she'd been afraid to want. When they pulled apart, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. I need to tell you something else. What? I talked to Tom this morning, before I came here, told him I wanted to transfer to the South Building. Different chain of command, different HR jurisdiction. You did? The position pays a little less, but it solves the power dynamic issue. We can date without the company losing its mind. When do you start? Monday, if that's okay with you. Victoria laughed through her tears. You already did it. You're asking permission after the fact. I needed to prove I was serious, that this wasn't just talk. She pulled him close again. You're an idiot. Probably. A sweet idiot, but still an idiot. I'll take it. They stood there in her office, holding each other while Seattle rain streaked the windows and the city moved around them, unaware and uncaring that two people had just decided to risk everything on hope. What do we tell Emma? Victoria asked. The truth. That I like you, that you like me, that we're going to try this and see what happens. Think she'll be okay with it? She drew a picture of the 4 of us. I think she'll be fine. Victoria pulled back to look at him. The 4 of us? You, me, her, and Evan, standing in front of your house. Our house, Victoria corrected quietly. The words hung there, too big and too soon, but also somehow exactly right. One step at a time, Daniel said. One step at a time, Victoria agreed. They made a plan. Dinner on Sunday, all four of them. Emma and Evan could continue their puzzle. Daniel would cook something that wouldn't poison anyone. Victoria would try not to alphabetize the bookshelf. Small steps, careful steps, but steps forward. Daniel left her office with a lightness in his chest he hadn't felt in years. Drove home, picked up Emma from school, and told her he had something important to discuss. "You're dating the radiator lady," Emma said before he could start. "How did you—" "Dad, you've been sad all week. Then you left early this morning, and now you're happy. It's not rocket science." "Rocket science is actually easier than 8-year-old logic." "So are you? Dating her?" "Yeah, Em. I am, if that's okay with you." Emma considered this seriously. "Does this mean we get to see Evan more?" "Probably." "Then it's okay. Evan's cool, and Victoria's nice, plus she's really pretty." "You mentioned that. Just making sure you noticed." Daniel pulled her into a hug. "I love you, kiddo." "Love you too, Dad, even though you're weird about relationships." "When did you get so smart?" "Always been smart. You just keep forgetting." Sunday came with clear skies and the kind of autumn light that made Seattle look like it belonged in postcards. Daniel made lasagna, slightly burned on the edges, but edible. Emma brought a new puzzle. Victoria brought wine and the kind of bread that cost more than Daniel's weekly grocery budget. They ate at the table in the Blue House, 4 of them. Carol had left for the evening, giving them privacy. Emma told stories about her week. Evan told stories about Victoria as a kid. Victoria threw bread at him. Daniel tried to remember the last time he'd felt this comfortable. After dinner, Emma and Evan went back to their puzzle. Victoria helped Daniel with dishes. "This is nice," she said quietly. "Yeah, it is. Scary too. Very scary." She bumped his shoulder. "But worth it?" Daniel looked through the doorway at his daughter and Victoria's brother, both laughing about something, both completely at ease. "Yeah," he said, "definitely worth it." They finished the dishes, joined Emma and Evan in the living room, worked on the puzzle until Emma fell asleep against Daniel's shoulder and Evan admitted he was tired. In the car on the way home, Emma mumbled half awake, "Are we going back next week? You want to?" "Yeah, Evan still needs help with that puzzle, and Victoria said she'd teach me about buildings." "Then, yeah, we'll go back next week." Emma smiled and drifted back to sleep. Daniel drove through dark streets, his daughter beside him, and felt the future opening up in ways he'd stopped letting himself imagine. It wouldn't be perfect. There would be complications and arguments and moments of doubt, but there would also be this: Sunday dinners and puzzle pieces and the feeling that he was building something instead of just maintaining what remained. And for the first time in 3 years, that felt like enough. More than enough. It felt like home. 3 months later, Daniel stood in the kitchen of the Blue House in Shoreline, burning grilled cheese sandwiches while Emma taught Evan how to shuffle cards at the table behind him. "You're doing it wrong," Emma said. "You have to bend them more." "If I bend them more, they'll fly everywhere," Evan protested. "That's half the fun." Daniel scraped the burnt edges off the sandwiches and plated them anyway. Victoria walked in from the living room where she'd been on a conference call about the Meridian Building expansion, still in her work clothes but barefoot. "How bad?" she asked, eyeing the sandwiches. "Edible. Barely." "That's improvement from last week." "Last week I set off the smoke alarm." "Exactly. Progress." She grabbed a sandwich and took a bite, made a face, swallowed anyway. "Emma, you want to tell your dad his cooking still needs work?" "Dad knows his cooking needs work," Emma called back without looking up from the cards. "We're just being nice about it." Daniel shook his head and carried the plates to the table. This had become their routine. Sundays at the Blue House, sometimes Saturdays too. Emma and Evan had finished 3 puzzles and started a 4th. Victoria had taught Emma the basics of architectural drawing. Daniel had fixed approximately 17 things that didn't really need fixing, but gave him an excuse to stay. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. 2 weeks ago, Victoria had to cancel dinner because one of her projects hit a crisis. Emma had cried, not understanding why buildings were more important than promises. Daniel had tried to explain badly and ended up calling Victoria at midnight to apologize for something that wasn't even his fault. "I'm screwing this up," Victoria had said, voice tight. "I'm exactly what Evan warned you about. Too busy, too distracted." "You're human," Daniel had said. "That's allowed." "Is it?" "Yeah, it is." Last month, Daniel's truck finally died. Just gave up in the Hale Industries parking lot, transmission gone. Repair cost more than the vehicle was worth. He'd sat in the cab for 20 minutes, doing math in his head, knowing he couldn't afford a car payment, but needing transportation. Victoria had offered to buy him a new truck. Daniel had said no. They'd fought about it, their first real fight. She'd called him stubborn and proud. He'd called her controlling and out of touch with how normal people lived. Rachel had mediated somehow, explaining to Victoria that Daniel needed to solve his own problems even when help was available. Explaining to Daniel that accepting help wasn't weakness. He'd bought a used Honda Civic with money borrowed from Rachel, which felt less complicated than taking Victoria's money. Victoria had said she understood, but Daniel could tell it bothered her that her solution was too simple for his complicated pride. But they were learning, slowly, messily. Tonight, after dinner, Emma wanted to show Evan a new card trick she'd learned from a YouTube video. Daniel and Victoria ended up in the kitchen alone, washing dishes side by side. "I need to tell you something," Victoria said. Daniel's stomach tightened. Those words never led anywhere good. "Okay, I've been offered a project in Singapore. Major commercial development. 3 months of on-site work, maybe 4. The dish Daniel was holding slipped. He caught it before it hit the floor. "When?" "They want me to start in 6 weeks. That's a long time." "I know." Daniel set the dish in the drying rack carefully. "What did you tell them?" "That I needed to think about it, to talk to you first. You want to go." It wasn't a question. Victoria didn't deny it. It's the kind of project that comes once in a career, the kind that changes everything. Then you should go. "Daniel, I mean it. This is huge. You can't turn it down because of me." Victoria turned off the water, dried her hands. "It's not just you. It's Evan. It's Emma. It's this thing we've built. 4 months is a long time to be gone. We'll figure it out." "How?" "You work full-time. You have Emma. I can't expect you to drive out here every day to check on Evan. Carol's here during the day, and we'll work something out for evenings. Maybe Emma and I can stay here on weekends. Maybe—" Daniel stopped. "Wait, you're asking me to help with Evan? I'm asking if you'd be willing to. I know it's a lot. I know you didn't sign up for—" "Yes. Yes? Yes, I'll help with Evan. Whatever you need, whatever he needs." Victoria stared at him. "You don't have to decide right now. Think about it. Talk to Emma. This is big, Daniel. It's not just checking in occasionally. It's actual responsibility for my brother's care. I know what it is. And you're still saying yes?" Daniel reached for her hand. 4 other guys sat on that couch and made promises. "I'm not making promises. I'm just telling you what I'll do. I'll show up. I'll take care of Evan. I'll make sure this house doesn't fall apart while you're building something incredible halfway across the world. What if something goes wrong? Then I'll handle it. Or I won't, and I'll call you, and we'll figure it out together. But you're not staying here because you're afraid I can't handle things. That's not how this works." Victoria's eyes filled. "I don't know what I did to deserve you. Invented a fake radiator problem." She laughed through tears. "Best decision I ever made." They told Evan and Emma together after dishes. Emma took it better than Daniel expected. 4 months is 16 weekends. Emma calculated immediately. "That's not that bad." "It feels like a lot," Victoria said. "Mom went to Portland for 6 weeks last year for her job. It was fine. We did video calls every night." "We'll do video calls," Victoria promised. "Every single night." Evan was quieter. "You're really going? If you're okay with it. If Daniel's okay with it." "Daniel already said he's okay with it." The question is whether I'm okay being someone's responsibility again. Evan's jaw was tight. I'm 26, Vic, not 17. I don't need a babysitter. I know that. Do you? Because it feels like you're arranging care for me like I'm a kid. Daniel spoke up. Can I say something? Evan looked at him. Sure. I'm not your babysitter. I'm your friend, your sister's boyfriend, the guy who eats burnt grilled cheese at your table every week and loses at cards to my 8-year-old with you watching. If Victoria goes to Singapore, I'm going to keep doing exactly what I've been doing, showing up, being here. That's it. What if I have a medical emergency? Then I'll call 911 and Carol and Victoria, in that order. Then I'll probably panic because I'm not great in emergencies. But I'll be here. What if I don't want you here? Then you tell me to leave and I'll leave. But I'll come back the next day and ask again. Because that's what people who care about each other do. They show up, even when it's awkward. Evan studied him. You really mean that? Yeah, I really do. Something shifted in Evan's expression. Okay, then, yeah. Victoria should go. Victoria reached across the table for her brother's hand. You're sure? I'm sure. You've put your life on hold for me for 9 years. Go build something amazing. Daniel and Emma will keep me company. We've got puzzles to finish anyway. The next 6 weeks were chaos. Victoria prepared for Singapore, arranging contractors, finalizing designs, briefing her team. Daniel coordinated with Carol about Evan's schedule. Emma made a countdown calendar and decorated it with drawings of airplanes and buildings. The night before Victoria left, Daniel stayed late at the Blue House after Emma had fallen asleep in the guest room they'd started calling hers. I'm terrified, Victoria admitted. They were on the couch, her head on his shoulder. Of the project? Of leaving. Of being gone that long. Of something happening to Evan and me being on the other side of the world. Nothing's going to happen. You can't promise that. No. But I can promise that if something does happen, I'll handle it, and I'll call you, and we'll get through it. Victoria tilted her head to look at him. What if I come back and everything's changed? What if Emma decides she doesn't like me anymore? What if you realize this is too much work without the payoff of actually seeing me? Emma adores you, and I'm pretty sure I'm falling in love with you, so 4 months isn't going to change that. The words hung in the air. Daniel hadn't meant to say them. They'd slipped out like truth sometimes does, unbidden and terrifying. Victoria sat up. You're falling in love with me? Apparently. Is that okay? Daniel Carter, you can't just drop that and ask if it's okay. Why not? Because... She stopped. Because I'm falling in love with you too, and now I have to leave for 4 months, and the timing is terrible. The timing's always terrible. That's kind of our thing. She kissed him, long and desperate, and like she was trying to memorize the moment. Come back, Daniel said when they pulled apart. What? From Singapore. Come back. That's all I need you to promise. That you'll come back. Of course I'm coming back. Then we'll be fine. Victoria left on a Wednesday. Daniel took the day off work to drive her to the airport. Emma came too, insisting she wanted to say goodbye properly. At the departure's drop-off, Victoria hugged Emma for a long time. Take care of Evan for me, Victoria whispered. I will, and Dad will too. I know, you guys are pretty great. So are you, even if you're leaving. Victoria laughed and wiped her eyes. She turned to Daniel. 4 months. 16 weekends. Call me if anything. I'll call you. Now go. You're going to miss your flight. One more kiss. Then Victoria grabbed her bag and walked into the terminal. Emma waved until she disappeared from view. In the car, Emma was quiet for a long time. Finally, Dad? Yeah? Are you sad? A little. Are you? Yeah, but also excited. She's going to build something really cool. She is. And she's coming back. She is. Emma nodded, satisfied. Then it's okay to be sad. Sad means it matters. Daniel glanced at his daughter. When did you get so wise? Always been wise. You just keep forgetting. The first week without Victoria was strange. Daniel drove to the Blue House every evening after work, made dinner with Emma and Evan, helped Evan with his physical therapy exercises, fixed small things around the house. Video called Victoria when it was morning in Singapore, midnight in Seattle. The second week was harder. Evan had a bad day. Pain that the medication didn't touch, frustration with his limitations, grief for the life he didn't get to live. Daniel sat with him, not offering solutions, just being present while Evan worked through it. "You don't have to stay," Evan said eventually. "I know. But you are anyway." "Yeah." "Why?" Daniel considered the question. "Because when my marriage fell apart, my sister sat with me while I cried about failing. Didn't try to fix it, just stayed. And I learned that sometimes the most important thing you can do for someone is just not leave. Victoria's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have all of you." The third week, Emma caught a bad cold. Nothing serious, but she felt miserable and wanted her mom. Daniel called Sarah, who came over with medicine and soup and stayed until Emma fell asleep. "You're doing good, Danny," Sarah said on her way out. "With Emma, with all this." "Doesn't always feel like it." "It never does. But she's happy. That's what matters." "You think?" "I know." She talks about Victoria and Evan constantly, about Sunday dinners and puzzles and feeling like she has a bigger family now. Sarah paused at the door. "I was wrong about you, before. I thought you weren't capable of being present, but you were just waiting for the right people to be present for." After Sarah left, Daniel sat in the blue house living room and felt the weight of all the pieces coming together. Emma asleep upstairs, Evan watching TV in his room, Victoria on the other side of the world building something extraordinary. This was his life now, complicated, messy, full. The fourth week, Carol called him at work. "Evan's running a fever, 102. I've given him Tylenol, but it's not coming down." Daniel left immediately, called Victoria on the way, got her voicemail, left a message. At the house, Evan was in bed, shivering despite 3 blankets. "Hey," Daniel said. "Carol says you're trying to cook yourself from the inside." "Feels like it." "When did it start?" "This morning. Thought it was nothing. Then it got worse." Daniel called Evan's doctor. They recommended bringing him in if the fever didn't break in the next hour. It didn't. Daniel and Carol got Evan into the car, a production that involved the wheelchair, careful transfers, and Evan gritting his teeth through pain. At the clinic, the doctor checked him over. Infection. Nothing serious, but it needed antibiotics and monitoring. They could manage it at home with proper care. Daniel stayed that night, slept on the couch in case Evan needed anything, set alarms every 4 hours to check his temperature, called Victoria when it was a reasonable hour in Singapore. "I should come home," she said immediately. "It's just an infection. The doctor says he'll be fine." "But what if—" "Victoria, he's okay. The antibiotics are working. His fever's down to 99. You don't need to come home." "I hate being so far away." "I know, but this is exactly why I'm here. So you can do your work without constantly worrying." "How did I get so lucky?" "Fake radiator problem, remember?" She laughed, but he could hear the tears. "I miss you. I miss all of you." "We miss you too. 2 more months. 8 more weekends. Exactly." By morning, Evan's fever was gone. He was weak, but on the mend. Emma brought him books from the library. Daniel made soup that was only slightly better than his grilled cheese. They settled into a routine. The weeks passed. Video calls with Victoria became the highlight of everyone's day. She showed them the building taking shape, glass and steel rising against Singapore's skyline. Emma showed her completed homework assignments. Evan showed her puzzles in progress. Daniel just listened, content to hear her voice. 2 months became 1 month. 1 month became 2 weeks. 2 weeks became days. The night before Victoria was due home, Daniel couldn't sleep. He lay on the couch in the blue house, his usual spot now, and thought about everything that had changed since that rainy Thursday when he'd heard her crying in a parking lot. He'd been so scared then, of caring, of risking, of building something that might fall apart, and he was still scared. But the fear felt different now, not paralyzing, just present, a reminder that what they had mattered enough to be worth protecting. Victoria's flight landed at noon on a Saturday. Daniel and Emma picked her up from the airport. Evan had insisted on coming too, and they'd made it work with the wheelchair and Carol's help. When Victoria walked through arrivals, Emma spotted her first and took off running. Victoria dropped her bags and caught her, lifting her in a hug that spoke of 4 months of missing. "You got taller," Victoria said. "It's only been 4 months. You definitely got taller." Evan wheeled over next. Victoria hugged him fiercely, and Daniel saw both of them crying. Siblings who'd been through hell and back, separated by distance, but not by love. Finally, Victoria turned to Daniel. She looked tired, jet-lagged, beautiful. "Hi," she said. "Hi. I'm back. I see that. Did everything—" Daniel pulled her close. "Everything's fine. Evan's healthy. Emma's thriving. The house is still standing. We're okay." Victoria buried her face in his shoulder. "I missed you so much. Missed you too." They drove back to Shoreline together. All 4 of them. Emma talked non-stop about everything Victoria had missed. Evan added commentary. Victoria held Daniel's hand across the center console and didn't let go. At the house, Carol had prepared dinner, real dinner, not burnt grilled cheese. They ate at the table, all 4 chairs filled, and it felt like something clicking into place. After dinner, after Emma and Evan had gone to their respective rooms, Daniel and Victoria stood in the kitchen. "It worked," Victoria said quietly. "You did it. You took care of Evan. You kept everything going. We did it, all of us. I was so scared it wouldn't work, that something would go wrong and you'd realize this was too much. Something did go wrong. Evan got sick, and we handled it. Because you were here. Because we all were. That's the point, Victoria. It's not just you anymore. It's not just you carrying everything. It's us, all of us, carrying it together." She looked at him with those dark eyes that had first caught him in the rain. "I love you. I should have said it before I left, but I was scared and the timing was wrong, and I love you too." "Yeah? Yeah, have for a while now. Even though I'm complicated?" "Because you're complicated. Because you're brilliant and terrified, and you care so much it physically hurts you sometimes. Because you built an empire and still make time for puzzles with my daughter. Because you're human." Victoria kissed him, soft and certain and full of 4 months of missing. "Move in," she said when they pulled apart. Daniel blinked. "What?" "Move in. You and Emma. Here. This house has 4 bedrooms and you're here every night anyway. Emma already has a room. You could have a room. We could be a family, officially." Victoria, I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. But I spent 4 months on the other side of the world missing you so badly I could barely breathe. And I realized life is too short to wait for perfect timing. This is messy and complicated and probably a terrible idea by conventional standards. But it feels right. Does it feel right to you? Daniel thought about Emma asleep in her room, about Evan in his, about Sunday dinners and burnt grilled cheese and video calls at midnight, about building something instead of just maintaining what remained. "Yeah," he said. "It feels right. So you'll do it?" "On one condition." "What?" "I pay rent and utilities. I'm not a charity case, Victoria." She smiled, stubborn and proud. "That's me." "Fine. You can pay rent. We'll work out something fair." "Thank you. But I'm buying Emma the bike she's been wanting. That's non-negotiable." Victoria, "Non-negotiable, Daniel. I'm her almost stepmother. I get bike buying rights." "Almost stepmother." The word settled in Daniel's chest like something taking root. They told Emma and Evan in the morning over pancakes that Daniel somehow didn't burn. "Wait, really?" Emma's eyes went wide. "We're moving here? Like, actually living here?" "If that's okay with you," Daniel said. "Are you kidding? This is the best day ever. Evan, did you hear? I get to live here." Evan grinned. "I heard. Welcome to the family, Em. Does this mean I get my own room? Like forever?" "Like forever," Victoria confirmed. Emma launched herself at Victoria in a hug. "This is so cool. Wait until I tell my friends. I'm going to have the best show and tell story ever." "What about you?" Daniel asked Evan. "You okay with us invading your space?" "Invading implies you haven't already been here every day for 4 months. At least now I won't have to hear you trying to sneak out at midnight without waking me up." "You knew about that?" "Daniel, you're not as quiet as you think. Also, the couch squeaks." They moved in over the next month. Not all at once, small pieces at a time. Emma's toys and books, Daniel's clothes and tools. The framed photo of Emma from his old apartment that Victoria immediately put on the living room bookshelf next to photos of her and Evan. Rachel helped, of course, showed up with boxes and opinions about furniture arrangement. "You're sure about this?" she asked Daniel while they were packing his bedroom. "As sure as I've been about anything." "It's fast, Danny. I know. But it's right." "Yeah, it is." Rachel hugged him. "I'm proud of you for taking the risk, for letting yourself be happy. Thanks for pushing me, for not letting me hide. That's what sisters are for." Sarah came by too, helping Emma pack her room at the old house. Daniel found them sitting on Emma's bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and books. "You're really doing this," Sarah said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah. She's good for you, for Emma. She is. Travis and I are getting married next spring." The news should have hurt, didn't. "Congratulations." "You mean that?" "I do. You deserve to be happy, Sarah. We both do." She smiled. "Look at us. Actually being adults. Took long enough." 2 months after Victoria came home, on a Sunday morning, Daniel woke up in the blue house to sun streaming through windows and Emma's voice carrying from the kitchen. "No, Evan, you have to crack the eggs like this. See? Dad does it wrong, too." "There's a wrong way to crack eggs?" "There's a wrong way to do everything. That's what makes cooking interesting." Daniel got up, pulled on a t-shirt, and wandered into the kitchen. Emma and Evan were making pancakes, or attempting to. There was batter on the counter, flour on the floor, and eggs of questionable integrity in a bowl. Victoria stood by the coffee maker, watching them with a smile. "Morning," Daniel said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Morning. Your daughter is teaching my brother to cook." "Brave man. He's handling it better than you do." "That's because I set the bar very low." They stood there watching Emma and Evan argue about the proper pancake flipping technique. The kitchen was a mess. The pancakes would probably be terrible. None of it mattered. "Daniel?" Victoria said quietly. "Yeah?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For staying. Every man I dated before you left when they saw what my life actually looked like. But you stayed, even when it was hard, even when it would have been easier to walk away." Daniel turned her around to face him. "You want to know a secret?" "What?" "I'm not staying because I'm noble or brave or any of those things. I'm staying because all of this, is exactly what I was missing. A family, a home, people who need me as much as I need them." "We do need you." "I know, and that's not a burden. It's a gift." Emma called from the stove. "Dad, is this enough butter?" Daniel looked at the pan. There was approximately a stick of butter melting. "That might be too much butter, Em. There's no such thing as too much butter." That's what Evan said. "Evan is a terrible influence." "I'm right here," Evan protested. "I know. I said what I said." They ate the terrible pancakes together, all 4 of them, at the table in the blue house, laughing and arguing and being exactly what they were, imperfect people building an imperfect family. Later, after breakfast was cleaned up and Evan was doing his physical therapy exercises and Emma was building something elaborate with Legos in her room, Victoria found Daniel fixing the loose hinge on the pantry door. "You know we could hire someone to do that," she said. "I know, but I like fixing things. Even when they're not broken? Especially then, preventive maintenance." Victoria leaned against the counter. "I have something to tell you." Daniel looked up. "Good something or bad something?" "Good, I think." The Singapore project was a success. They want me to consult on 3 more developments in Asia. Long-term contracts, a lot of travel. "Okay. You're not worried?" "About you traveling? About me being gone? About having to manage Evan and Emma and everything here?" Daniel set down his screwdriver. "Are we doing this again? The thing where you assume I'm going to leave the minute things get complicated?" Victoria, I moved in. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Yes, it'll be hard when you travel. Yes, we'll miss you. But we'll handle it. That's what families do." She studied him. "Families. Yeah, unless you have a different word for whatever this is. No, family works. She moved closer. I'm going to mess this up sometimes. Be too focused on work, miss important things, forget to be present. And I'm going to be too in my head sometimes. Overthink everything. Make decisions based on fear instead of trust. Daniel pulled her close. We're both going to screw up. But we're going to screw up together, and we're going to figure it out. Because that's what staying means. When did you get so wise? I had good teachers. An 8-year-old who keeps reminding me that complicated means it matters. A 26-year-old who taught me that showing up is everything. And a billionaire architect who saw something in a facilities manager that even he didn't see. What did I see? Someone worth taking a risk on. Victoria kissed him, long and slow and certain. I love you, see, she said. I love you too. Even though I'm leaving for Tokyo next month? Especially because you're leaving for Tokyo next month. Build amazing things, Victoria. That's who you are. We'll be here when you get back. Promise? Promise. 6 months later, on a Sunday in spring, Daniel stood in the backyard of the blue house watching Emma and Evan race each other. Emma running, Evan in his chair, both of them laughing and trash-talking like siblings. Victoria came out with iced tea and sat next to him on the porch steps. They're going to destroy the grass, she observed. Probably. I should tell them to stop. Probably. Neither of them moved. I got the finalized contract today, Victoria said. The Soul Project. They want me to lead the entire design team. That's huge. It means 2 months in Korea, maybe more. Okay. You're really okay with it? Daniel looked at her. Are you really still asking me that? Fair point. She sipped her tea. Emma asked me something yesterday. What? If she could call me Mom. Daniel's chest tightened. What did you say? I said I'd be honored, but that she should talk to you first. And Sarah, I don't want to overstep. You're not overstepping. You've been more present in Emma's life this year than I was in my marriage. If she wants to call you Mom, that's her choice. You're sure? I'm sure. In the yard, Emma tackled Evan's wheelchair in a hug that nearly tipped them both over. Evan was laughing, telling her to be careful, but not pushing her away. We did it, Victoria said quietly. Did what? Built something real, something that lasts. Daniel reached for her hand. You sound surprised. I am. 9 years I've been telling myself that no one stays, that my life is too complicated, that I'm not worth the effort. And now? Now I'm sitting on a porch with a man who moved into my house, adopted my brother as family, and doesn't flinch when I tell him I'm leaving for another country. Now I have a daughter who wants to call me Mom. Now I have Sunday dinners and burnt grilled cheese and puzzles on the coffee table. She looked at him. Now I have proof that I was wrong, that someone did stay. Multiple someones, Daniel corrected. This isn't just me. It's Emma and Evan and Rachel and Carol and everyone else who's chosen to be part of this messy, complicated family we've built. True. Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder. But you're the one who started it, in a parking lot, in the rain. You were crying. I'm not a monster. You're not. You're the opposite. You're someone who shows up, even when it's hard, even when it would be easier not to. Emma ran over, out of breath and grass-stained. Dad, Victoria, watch this! They watched her do a cartwheel that was more enthusiasm than technique. Evan applauded from his chair. Emma took a bow. That was amazing, Victoria called. I know! Evan taught me! Evan cannot do cartwheels, Em. He told me how to do them. That counts. Daniel pulled Victoria closer. This is my life now. Cartwheels and grass stains and chaos. You sound happy about it. I am. Well, even though it's nothing like what you planned? Especially because it's nothing like what I planned. Plans are overrated anyway. Victoria laughed. The facilities manager has become philosophical. The billionaire architect has become domestic. We've both changed. For the better? Daniel thought about 3 years ago. divorced, lonely, terrified of risking anything that might hurt. Compared to now, living in a blue house with a woman he loved, a daughter who was thriving, and a kid in a wheelchair who'd become the brother he never had. Yeah, he said, definitely for the better. That night, after Emma was asleep and Evan was in his room and the house was quiet, Daniel found Victoria on the porch again. She was looking at the stars, rare and visible through a break in Seattle's clouds. Can't sleep? He asked. Too much on my mind. The Soul Project? That, and other things. What other things? Victoria turned to face him. Marriage things. Daniel's heart stuttered. Marriage things? I've been thinking about it. About us. About making this official. She held up a hand before he could speak. I'm not proposing. Not yet. I'm just thinking out loud. Okay. We've done everything backward, moved in before dating properly, blended our families before defining our relationship, built a life together without any of the traditional steps. Is that bad? No, it's very us. But I'd like... She stopped. I want to marry you, Daniel. Eventually. When the timing's right. When Emma's ready. When Evan's ready. When we're ready. Daniel pulled her close. You know what I think about timing? What? That it's never right. There's always a reason to wait. Always something complicated in the way. But life is complicated. Love is complicated. And I'd rather be complicated with you than perfect with anyone else. So you're saying, I'm saying whenever you want to make this official, I'm ready, tomorrow, next year, 10 years from now. I'm not going anywhere. Victoria kissed him under the stars, under the Seattle sky that had brought them together with rain and parking lots and overheard conversations that changed everything. I love you, she said. I love you too. Even though I'm leaving for Seoul in 2 months? Even though you're leaving for Seoul in 2 months. Build your buildings, Victoria. Change the world. We'll be here, always. 2 years later, they got married in the backyard of the Blue House. Small ceremony. Emma and Evan stood up with them. Rachel officiated. Sarah came with Travis and cried happy tears. Carol brought a casserole. It rained, because of course it did. This was Seattle. This was them. And when Daniel kissed his wife under an umbrella held by his daughter, with Evan cheering and Rachel laughing and rain soaking through his suit, he thought about that night in the parking lot, about hearing Victoria's voice crack as she said, "No man ever stays." She'd been wrong. Not because Daniel was special or heroic or different from the men before him, but because he'd learned something in 3 years of rebuilding himself after divorce. That showing up wasn't about perfection, it was about presence, about choosing to be there, day after day, through floods and fevers and burnt grilled cheese and complications. It was about seeing someone's messy, beautiful, complicated life and deciding that mess was worth staying for. And Victoria had done the same for him, seen his fear and his pride and his desperate need to be enough, had loved him anyway, had given him a family when he thought he'd lost his chance at one. They'd built something together, not perfect, not smooth, but real and lasting, and worth every risk they'd taken to get there. Ready? Victoria asked, rain streaming down her face. For what? The rest of our lives. Daniel looked at Emma, grinning with her flower basket. At Evan, wheelchair decorated with ribbons Emma had insisted on. At Rachel and Sarah and Carol and everyone else who'd chosen to be part of this strange, wonderful family. Yeah, he said, I'm ready. And he was.